Welcome to an episode of Live Stories with Marty O'Connor. I'm Marty here in Melbourne, and thank you for joining me, whatever part of the world you're in. Now, my guest tonight, we're crossing over to Dublin, and Tony St. Ledger. He's an Irish musician, songwriter, based in Dublin with a career over 50 years in the Irish music scene. He's been a guitarist in Trouble Pilgrims, formerly the Radiators from Space, that we did have Pete Holiday on as well, with two highly acclaimed albums. Now, his new album is a solo album, Man on the Bridge. Okay, now, the first song I want to play before we cross over to Tony and listen from the legend himself over to Dublin is the first song I'm going to play is one from 2020, which is song Instant Polaroid, live in the studio with the Troubled Pilgrims. And then we'll have a chat with Tony, and I'll have a few more treats, and we will at the end, we will be playing, we've got two, we'll play at the end also one of his songs from his new album, which is amazing, and with some pictures at the end of it. So let's listen to this, and then we'll cross over to Tony. Okay, guys.
In this city, in this town, such a long time ago, on a bridge, on a river, stood a man we didn't know. Instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid. Instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid. All that's left today is a vision of the past. A time when we could see things weren't built to last. These things were fading fast. It is instant light. Instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid. Instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid. Free me from this place, give me light, give me space, give me air, take me down to where he's standing still. He's frozen in time on a bridge, on a river, in my town, such a long time ago. I always knew he was there. He's frozen in time. Instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid. Instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid, instant Polaroid. He must have just stood there, in a dark room, in a dark space, on a dark night, in a dark way, on some dark days.
It's a real pleasure to be in the Southern Hemisphere.
Oh my God, it's just lovely. And I'm in the evening and you're over there and we just listened to Instant Pool, right? But which I love that. That was done in the studio. I love that. I mean, I know we've got some more taste as we go along. So, Tony, I think they've all seen and heard the intro, and you're a bit of a legend over there. And what you're doing is so. I want to start off. This is your life story. So, tell us where this all started. A little bit about your parents and your family and growing up in Dublin, and then move forward. The less I talk, the more time you get. I know we can't fit your whole story in the time that we have. So, Tony, over to you, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Marty. And Dublin it means the world to me, as it does to a lot of people, and everybody's town means a lot to them. But my parents were born within, I'm not joking, less than a mile of the River Liffey on both sides, south side and north side. Okay, my dad is from Pearse Street, Greenore Terrace, right, and my mum was from Sheriff Street. And there was a little ferry that used to, before the bridges started coming up the Liffey, there was a ferry that transported workers in the morning across the ferry, right, for like, shilling, people on the bikes, they'd have all their bikes on it and all. It's incredible. I've seen photographs there. I have a picture of my dad. I think I might have sent it to you, Marty, of my dad working on the ferry with Christy Cummins.
You actually did, and that comes up on the end of the show with your photograph.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And his brother Jimmy took that photograph. We've got that from both angles, right? But so my mom and dad met there, and I was brought into an incredible Dublin galaxy. Okay, that's the way I describe it, because these people were full of all songs, stories. We used to have to, as kids, in the flats, have a performance ready. When they called on you in a house years ago, you better have something ready. And I used to do the Huckle book with my cousin, Lord rest him, Thomas, who's gone many, many years now. But we used to go, lads, do the Huckle book. We'd do it right there and then. Okay, so you had to have something to do in terms of performance. So my dad was a good singer, and they were all good singers. And I was laughing with Pete Holiday yesterday, because in the stairwells in the flats is the most incredible reverb. In the stairwells of the flats. Yes. And people, when they get a few jars on the Marty coming back in the evening, people would wait to get to the stairwell to sing, because the reverb was so natural and so brilliant. And on the record, I used to say to Pete, up the flats, because when we want reverb, I'd say give us up the flats, because beautiful reverb. Yeah. So in my family, that was that. My mom and dad worked incredibly hard for us. They gave us everything. They gave us their lives. I don't.
How many was in your family there, Tony? Sorry.
There was four children. My sister and two brothers, Karen and Paul, who are both overseas. Okay, but my mom is still alive. My dad has passed away, which kind of led to all this ignition, because I was looking for this photograph, which is right behind me, actually. Man, on the original, it's there. I think I can point. It's there on the wall. It's not a Polaroid. It's the original print of me on my bike on O'Connell Bridge. Why am I on a tricycle in Dublin City on O'Connell Bridge? Because we lived down the road. We lived in Essex Street. My mum and dad's first place was in Temple Bar, as everybody would know it, on East Essex Street. And that's why I have a photograph, again, I sent it to you, of my mum and I on Grattan Bridge, which was Essex Street Bridge.
They're actually, just for our viewers, that's actually all these photographs are at the end of the show with Tony's song, but I won't say the end of the show yet. Go ahead, Tony, please.
Yeah, so that's how I have these photographs of myself and my mum on Essex Street Bridge, now Grattan Bridge. And I have a picture of my dad, which is this one back here, on O'Connell Bridge on a tricycle, because we just lived around the corner. So I think, you know, you could call me a Dubliner, right, at this stage of the game. And as far as I could find as well, Marty, their parents were Dublin people as well. So I'm not going to go on for a big, huge Dublin flag on this. What I'm saying to you is we're passionate about where we came from. We didn't have everything. We worked really hard for everything that they got. We were always workers. It was always, I've worked all my life, like my parents have worked all their lives. There was no way was unemployment ever known. You know, to not have a job would be the biggest sin you could ever do, you know? So we always worked.
And where did that bring in there, alluding it? Where did you get your inspiration, and when did you start? I know you started at a young age. You've been doing it. You're a bit of a legend there. Well, a big legend. Is where did you start this? Well, where did you start? Where did the voice come from? Where did all your imagination come from? What
Well,
age?
the voice.
What
Well,
age did it start at?
I did. Well, I tell you what, Marty. I only really had to root in the labyrinth of my mind, and I remember something very in particular, and it was in Sheriff Street in my mom's family flat. There was actually a record player there that I saw one day. Somebody had it, and they had the single "The Wild Colonial Boy," and I'm sure you know that song. And I couldn't believe that the needle goes onto this black thing, right? And next minute the song come out. And I played it for hours, right? And then I started hearing the words that they were singing, and I really thought it was incredible. There was Peters and Lee records there, you know, all the 45s. And I kind of loved it. I just loved it. But musically, I did not sing. You know, my dad sang. They used to call him like the Dublin Matt Monroe, because he used to do Walk Away, and he did it brilliantly, right? And I've been in many sing songs with my dad, right? You didn't have to ask him twice to sing a song, right? But I wasn't really doing that at that point, because I never really believed that I had a voice, right? But my dad used to always say to me, because he did inspire me in a lot of things in art and in music, because he used to say to me, he says, you know, your grandfather sang on Radio Air. And I says, what do you mean? He says, yeah, my dad sang on Radio Air. Now, I worked in proximity to RTE in my professional career, and I looked in the archives to try and find, could you dig that up? And that wasn't to be found. But my dad was always saying, yeah, of course you can sing. Your grandfather sang on Radio Air, right? I mean, that was just the way that was played. But yeah, then I want to say a man you have down your way in Australia, a gentleman from Clontarf, Ray Kelleher, who lives in Australia now for many years. I was going past the national school here, the girls' school. There was the boys' school and the girls' school. And we heard this racket one day coming out of the school, right? And I was just with the lads, and we floated along. We just started, you know, where's that coming from? Just like music, you know? And we went in, we stuck our head around the door, and there it was. Drums, guitars, bass guitar. And we looked around. Instead of the lads saying, they let us in, right? And Ray Kelleher said, do you want to have a go on that? And that was his bass, right? Now, man, these guys were loud, right? These were like a rock band. I think they were called Raw Deal. I'd have to maybe look that up. I think they were called Raw Deal. But Ray says, do you want to go on that? Do you want to have a go? So I picked up this bass, right? And as soon as you hit it, like it was like, you know, bone rattling, you know, like seriously, like you shatter your marrow. And I thought, Jesus, you know, God Almighty, what a thing. I just loved that, right? So actively after Ray, and I always thank Ray every time I get a chance to correspond with him on Facebook or whatever. I always say, Ray, you know, I was the first lash I ever got out of an instrument was on your bass, you know. But then I pursued it, Marty. I hope I'm not ranting, but I pursued it, I met an incredible guy called Anto Henry, who was a neighbor of mine, a very unusual guy, an artistic guy, a very talented guy, a writer guy. And he was with a band, again, with a guy, God, called Leo Regan, who's a BAFTA winner now, a drummer. And we started kind of getting into this band in a place called Costco College, which Louis Roden was the guitarist. He turned out to be one of the top violinists in the Dublin Chamber Orchestra in the end. I mean, a really big, knowledgeable guy. So Leo was on the drums. He turned into an incredible filmmaker. You can look him up. All your listeners can look up Leo Regan. His work. He made films with skinheads. He lived with the skinheads in England. He moved in with them. They let him live with him. He won BAFTAs for that. He's made incredible new films, and you know, that's what it was. Unfortunately, he was a great drummer. He had an accident in a car with a band from Howth, and they were all lucky to get out of that with their lives. But Leo got injured in that, and it stopped him from playing again, playing drums into the future. But Louis still plays, and I was with Anto recently. He came back. Anto was the biggest hippie man, punk guy you'd ever meet. He was a hybrid. But what I want to say about Anto, because you were asking me about music, was that I stayed with Anto. Anto started showing me where the notes were on the guitars. And I stayed with him. I just couldn't get enough of him. We stayed together trying to write songs when we were young. And he showed me how the octaves work on the guitar. And I'm indebted to him forever for that. And I got a chance to have a few points from him. He was home about a year back, and I hadn't seen him in many years. He's a crazy story because he's the most passive, kind, gentle guy ever. He left Ireland and went over and joined the US Navy. Okay.
Oh my God, what a difference.
Everybody said, what the hell? Anto Henry's in the US Navy. And he was, I think he was in logistics, and he was like stationed in Italy. He was like doing helicopter parts. You know, he was a helicopter parts guy. And
wow.
And he did that. He met a lady, the LA woman, like yourself, Marty. You know, the women, the women put the handcuffs on you. You know, and,
many of them.
many of them. So Anto fell in love with the LA woman and went to America and did the Navy. So that was incredible that he did that. And his stories when we had a pint together was just fascinating about his. You would not put him in a million years in a controlled environment like that.
And the point is there, you said like it was a helicopter. I've flown helicopters only in the private myself. I love flying helicopter. I haven't flown for a few years, but I love that. I've done testing. But going back to yours, you're talking about everyone and your experiences. I want to know more about you. What inspires you? And if I can just go with one here that's really kind of gets me, and I think if you can explain, and then we'll play it. If you can just explain one of your songs, and we're going to go to the other ones, but the old days. What is that about? If you can explain the start, and then we're going to cut and play that song.
Yeah, Marty, thanks again. Yeah, that song, a lot of the songs that's on the record, Man in the Bridge, was conceived during that horrid pandemic, right?
Yes.
Because we all kind of crawled under a rock somewhere. I crawled under a rock and started writing songs and recording here in the house. Yes. But the old days, to answer your question, that was like, I spit that out of me in anger. Really, there's a cynical vein in that, right? Yeah. You hear the anger. I like the old days better, right?
Yes.
Because I could see no way out of this pandemic for us. I thought
nobody could.
This is the deal. I thought, is this the deal? People in luminous jackets, barriers, no pubs, no town. And Marty, I want to tell you something. And I just recalled it yesterday, and I found the film actually. In the pandemic, when Dublin was empty, and was actually a Garda restriction, the police restriction that said, man, you're not allowed to go, whatever, 4 miles outside your house, or 2 miles. I think it was 2 miles at one point. Then it became 4. Yeah, 4 miles or whatever. And I said, shag this, man. I said, I wonder what the town looks like with nobody in it. And I got on my bike with my camera, right? Just the way you would, right? I cycled in with one hand and I went around town and I shot all the empty streets of Dublin, right? I have the film. And please God, I will use that film in the part of this project with Man on a Bridge. But the old days, Marty, to go back to the point, I started getting onto this, you know. We watch from speeding trains, you know, when we had great times going on holidays, looking out, the world outside us, you know, no chains will bind us, you know, like we're free. You know, we swam in clear blue water. We found treasure.
Well, you know what, Tony? You're 100% right. And I have obviously watched and listened to it before we've come on here over the last week. I understand exactly. It's going back to the days when you say it. So can we just play this now? Let's play as the old days, and we'll come back with Tony in a sec on the other end.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. Okay, we're back. Wow. Tony, amazing.
Thanks. Well, that film was made in Dunleary in the college out there, the institute, and a great people who were training to be filmmakers and all that. We got that footage out of there because whatever happened with that project, it kind of ran out of steam out there, and I managed to get the footage right through Pete and the guys, and they handed it over.
Yeah.
IDAT in Dunleary. It's a fantastic facility, but we got the footage out of it. So I got to manage to kind of move the music into it. So that's what it was. But yeah, that song goes down well, Marty, here for me on my own, in the band especially. There's a really good version of it in the lockdown with an audience under control in the Grand Social in Dublin. It's a good live version of it, I think, as well. But yeah, that's a payday was Friday. The endless Sundays. The food tastes better. You know what I mean? That's because now these days, like I've got tomatoes there, Marty. You might as well be eating water. They're tasteless. They look like tomatoes. They feel like tomatoes, but they don't taste like tomatoes. I remember what tomatoes taste like.
Well, you would remember the same with me as I remember fresh tomatoes, what they were like, and we still have them. But going back, because I don't want to, what you're going into is depth, and I love it. Is what like we actually mentioned Pete Holiday, a lovely man. He's been on the show. Pete is a legend himself. Correct. And just a lovely, and what he does for other people and other musicians is what was your highlight and what was your low light in your music industry? And you've been doing it for a long time.
Well, God, I can easily tell you my low, and my low was the guys one time in Dublin when we were playing as the Mr. Men and rehearsing in Mount Temple where you two rehearsed. Frank Carnes was up there in Mount Temple. Donald Moxham, an absolute legend, headmaster up in Foreign Master in Mount Temple, allowed us to rehearse where you two actually rehearsed. Okay. And we were up there, we rehearsed. And I had a good job, Marty, because I could draw. I could draw. I said this yesterday and I want to say it again, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I was on a disaster trajectory with school because I hated school.
Yes.
School was rough. We were caned in primary school, and we'd 47 boys in our class. They never knew who was there, okay? But the teachers were rough, mostly my life, okay? And we were caned there. I went up to St. Paul's College after that, still working in the evenings most of the time and a lot of times, and enjoying that bar work was great. I was in the pubs with the guys.
Yeah.
And I didn't give a shit about school, to be honest with you. I was bringing in money from early days.
I understand that.
Yeah, I loving it. So I like school was like, I'm wasting my time. I'm going, God, I want to be out living. Why do I have to be here? I just every day was a slog. And a slog, I excelled in ducking and diving because you had to be good to not get caught, to be lettered. But the letter was a treat as opposed to the cane because it was easier on the hand. But I was in a lot of trouble in school with a lot of guys, as they say, the usual suspects. But so I was in there. But what I wanted to say, so that this, please God, goes down forever, is that there was a man, the art teacher, Pat Dunn, Patsy Dunn, as he was affectionately known, a great artist, a gentleman, who in his class was a respite. He had a cassette recorder in the middle of the room, and we had all our materials around the room, and he had a cassette, and he would play Led Zeppelin. He could play Pink Floyd. He could play The Who. Well, the fact was, and not that he did that, he allowed people to have time on that cassette, and you could bring your cassette in and say, I wanted to listen to The Who. and we could all draw. And I worked really hard. I loved it, right? I didn't realize that is it this, the calculus when you're dyslexic with numbers?
Yep.
What's
Yep.
yeah? Effectively, I think I had that. Really, the truth is, I did. But
No, I actually have that. I had that.
Yeah, so I can't cough a number up to save my life, right?
No,
But
I go
anyway,
left, right, right, forward. Yeah, I know what you mean. Sorry,
but
John.
no, you're all right, Marty. But Patsy saved my bacon because I worked hard on I kept all my pictures from his classes, and I had them all in my portfolio. And I was in maths, right? And one day I was disrupting the maths class by goofing and fluting around. The maths teacher said to me, "St. Ledger, you're out of here. Go down to the art class and see will Pat Dunn let you sit in during my classes because you're doing shag all in here except wrecking everybody's head," right? So I went down and I knocked on the door and I said, "Mr. Dunn," I said, "I've been thrown out of maths and they're wondering if I could, Pat, in you come." And I had extra art and I ditched maths, right? Because it was just flogging a dead horse. And I had more art and I had a great book.
Do you think, Tony, there, what you're just saying, I can kind of, I can very relate to it. Do you find it's not just about the education, as you were saying there, you like, your chosen thing is about the teacher that puts in the effort?
Oh, you've got to be lucky, Marty. I was lucky there, man. I was lucky.
No, I know what you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah, see the career guidance. We were having a laugh about this. The career guidance in Dublin, in the schools. I don't know who that is, but the career guidance in Dublin was the boat to Holyhead in Wales. Leave Dublin. There was no work here. It was like nobody was doing anything, and that there was no direction, And also so my results was like maths NG, art A plus. I mean it was so obvious, really, but nobody really kind of noticed it.
It wasn't rocket science, but yes.
It was. Yeah, but you're fighting very hard in school. I was lucky in that school as well. And again, Patsy Dunn, thank you very, very, very much indeed. And I never met him in life after. And I would love to do that because I'd love to personally thank him. But yeah, that book got me into advertising. And I had a career in that. But I left. My mother thought I was mad. The lads wanted to go. We're back to my low point. The lads said, "We're going to London. Are you coming?" For music, to pursue our dream. And I had a good job. I was bringing home turkeys and hams at Christmas as gifts from the company. I had a good salary, like for a young fella. And I come into the house one evening and I said, "The band's going to London and I want to go." And my mom goes, "What are you talking about?" Like as mothers would do.
Yeah.
Like, what? You're going to London for what? You have a job here. You're good. You're still playing in the band here. Why would you want to go to London? Because she knew London and she had a lot of family over there in London. Like, I had plenty of aunties and uncles in London, very great people we spent a lot of time in London over the years as kids. We used to go to London on our holidays. It was the big treat. Yeah. But the long and the short of it, Marty, was, and my dad, of course, been the music lover. He says, "If he wants to go, sure, you should let him go." And off I went. I jacked my job in the ad game. And I went to London and it was to be for a period of time. I said, "Look, I'll be back. We're going over to showcase the band, because it was the only way you could possibly get maybe a record deal or be seen by somebody. It was a real chance, It was the center of the musical universe was London. You know that, Marty.
I do indeed.
So we went over there with 2 guitars, full amps, Frank, 2 guitars, full amps, Tama drum kit, and Pete. We lived in a flat. We had showcase gigs with our Irish management. We had our own sound engineer. We had a 3K PA with us. That's a big system where we were fully self-sufficient. And we did a showcase gig in Green Park, down the road from the Ritz Hotel in London, in a showcase gig for record companies.
I
We
know where
played,
it is. I was in Piccadilly Circus at the
of
time.
course, there you go. The Embassy Club, Marty.
Yes, yes.
We played in the Embassy Club one night. I think the guitarist and all from the Adam and the Ants guy was there. And we were there. We were in this kind of cattle market of bands. That's what it was, really. You jumped up, you played your 5 songs or your 6 songs, and you were out. We went home. We were so exhausted. We'd given it all. We got in the truck. We got out of the gig. We went home. And for the first time, really, which was the mortal sin, we didn't take our instruments out of the truck. And that truck was stolen. The whole lot of it. Everything gone. Right? My Fender Precision bass, I'm still looking for it, the black one, right? It's in a lot of those photographs on the German tour, that black Precision bass.
If anyone's watching this and you did beat back then, could you return it, please, to Tony?
It's the old Paul McCartney bass story. But yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, Marty, that's nuclear. It's nuclear. Because we've no money and we've no instruments and we've no way of making money.
Yes, that's right. You can't play something if you don't have it.
Correct. And so that's what I'm saying to you was a serious low point. But I want to say this, and people are very quick to stick boots on YouTube and very quick to stick digs on YouTube, which I will not have. Now, I know there's been a lot of sketchy things in recent times that I would say I'm not 100% with. But back then, Frank was very, very good friends with Larry Mullen, the drummer.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely guy, a gentleman. And Larry stayed with us in London. And for your Australian listeners, he brought in Shabu Shaba, which was the In Excess record. He had that, and we played that in the. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, if the truth be known. That record is so good. And he played Shabu Shaba. I thought, Jesus, man, listen, the drums on this. Michael Hutchinson, absolutely. And the guitars, the synthesizers, the way the synths were working with the drums. I just thought, oh God, this is amazing. But the bottom line was, I heard that record through Larry, who stayed with us in our very grovelly, horrid flat in we all lived together, you know. We never fought.
I've lived in London. I've met Bob Geldof, as I said to you, in London. He was squatting at the time. I wasn't squatting, but you think about it, is circumstances. Now, you were saying there just something that triggered in my head there. You said it. How did you feel, and what was did you think you were ever going to make money out of the music? Or
no, but well, I tell you what, no, never, Marty. But I do want to say that when the arse went out of our trousers, as they say, and we've nothing, you two sent us over a substantial sum of money to London. Wow. And we could buy, it was a serious contribution towards buying instruments.
Yeah.
And we had to get into bed with another guy who was managing Julian Lennon. I'm not going to go into that. It'll take too long. But the bottom line was we were back up and running. I couldn't tell my parents or anybody at home, guess what? We were balaclavaed over in London, right? Because we were in South London. We were rolling with there was some tricky people around. Let me say that to you, right? Some tricky people. And they had our card marked, but we got back up and running. So that was, the low point was losing all our instruments.
Yeah.
Losing our momentum, you know. And again, I want to put my hand up and thank the U2 boys. And I want to thank, Tariq Siddiqui, who has a very sketchy career. I found out afterwards, but we won't go into that, Marty.
You mentioned Julian Lennon there. I lived in Los Angeles for a while.
Oh.
I met Julian 3 or 4 times. I think he might be coming on the show, but a very nice man.
A gentleman.
very generous guy. But going back with your time in London, when did you feel comfortable you were earning a quid?
Never. We never made a washer out of it. No, that's a lie, because Marty, I'll condense this very quickly, because Tommy, our manager, had, let's say, a limited, all he had was a huge love for the band. But, you know, we needed management. We needed somebody who could open doors for us. And Tommy actively, in fairness to Tommy, he gave up percentages of his management and offered it to other people who could maybe do that. And we ended up getting managed by a guy called Don Murphy, who managed Adam and the Ants. And he was one of the top security guys in the music business in London. Did all the security for the Bee Gees, both as a band and individually. Anybody who was rolling in London, Don Murphy's people were on them. And his friend from the old days was Peter Grant, the Led Zeppelin manager. And Peter had been reclusive for many, many years in Eastbourne. The shell of a man that he was. Look, there's a photograph in the sequence you may see at the end of me reading a Led Zeppelin book in my house.
That comes up on the end. I did see it already. I know in advance. I get a sneak preview. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
So I'm reading this book in Dublin way back in the day, and it's about Led Zeppelin, because I loved Zeppelin in the art class, again with Patsy Dunn. Zeppelin was like blowing my mind open with images, you know, mysterious wizards, all this kind of stuff. And I was reading that book and loving it. Next minute, I'm in a room with Peter Grant, the manager. Don Murphy wanted to help Peter to get back on his feet again and give him something enthusiastic to see. And those two guys come down to our gig in South London in Hernhill. And somebody says, Peter Grant and Don Murphy's coming down to see you tonight. We thought, yeah, right. They came. And guess what? Jim Miller, who replaced Frank Kearns, who returned to playing Cactus World News, your musical people will know who they are.
I was going to say yes.
They do that, and they go. But Jim Miller replaced Frank in our band in Blue Russia. But Jim was an exceptional player of music, but he also played a mandolin, right? An electric mandolin, and he played it over his head. He was so proficient at music. But I think Peter Grant actually loved, because of Jimmy Page, that he heard something like the mandolin up against rock music. And he managed us. And I tell you for what, you asked me, did I ever make money out of the music business? Peter Grant, when he signed us, and he did sign us to be manager, that's not disputable. He put us on a salary. So we had money, proper money, coming into the house. And Peter Grant did that. He also brought us down to Eastbourne to write for maybe, I can't remember the period of time, but he said, guys, get down to Eastbourne, get out of London, go down to the studio there. I'm sure it was where Zeppelin had rehearsed, when, you know, as well. I swear to God, Marty. And he said, write songs, write your best songs in there. But Peter was not well. He had a lovely son called Warren Grant, who looked after his dad. And everybody wanted Peter to be well. But he had such a life. We all know that. You see the films. He had such a life, man. And, you know, he was not the man that he could be physically. He was a burnt man. But he was a gentleman too. So that was when we got a first few kids. But the band imploded. Heartbreak. Absolute heartbreak. Like, you know, like family, when it happens, it really hurts. Sometimes there's no getting over it. I've actually, because this record has made me kind of pick up, and, you know, because now I'm solely responsible for everything. You know,
you're very emotional there. That obviously really.
Yeah, I'll come back here, Marty. I think I sold my guitars. I can't remember exactly what I did, but I went back to the advertising business to try and make a plan to be a man, to be a family man, you know, to try and have a normal life because I didn't want to join another band. I come back and I produced a band from Finglas called the D11 Runners with the lovely, lovely, lovely Joe Fitzgerald, strong Christian man who I love dearly. Now you get me emotional on that. But Joe went off. You know, Joe had to leave us chronically with the motor neurons disease, which was savage, right? And I produced the D11 Runners. They're a huge band. Their shape and their style is directly related to the Commitments.
Wow. Well, see, I love the Commitments. I love that. Not just the Commitments itself. It's like the music, but like you were even talking the stories. And you said there at the start, you alluded to the very start when you said about Dublin. I've lived from Malahide. I could probably name all the places in Dublin, Philsborough, Rialto. I've lived in those, but you know what? I've met some beautiful people. But just going there is, I find you, because that's why I was asking that, is musicians don't go into it for the money. They go into it for the passion. Some will make it, and I'm sorry, a lot will not. But it's the passion. It's the love. It's like, you know, you could give them, just let me play or let me perform and create.
Well, you see, the nuts part of that, Marty, is when I come back and I got back into the advertising business, which I kindly did. And that story is particularly interesting. And I do want to say it. I come back to London and I got my book out that I had from school, plus the stuff I had in it from Guinness, Harp, Fiat cars. I'd worked a bit and I had some decent bits in my book. And I went back to town, not to the agency that I checked in out of. I went to Irish International Advertising, and I went to see an incredible guy, a big tall man called, just flew out of my head.
That's okay.
Bill, I'll get it. God.
Yeah.
I'm disgusted his name. I had it right there and it just jumped out of my head. Anyway, the long and the short is I went around to, I'll get his name in a while. But I went to Irish International for an appointment and I'm sitting in with Bill. And he's looking at my work and he's saying to me, Tony, you know, your book is great. You know, he says, I've nothing here for at least the next 4 to 6 months. Okay. Bill Felton, forgive me, Bill Felton, gentleman Bill Felton. And so Bill Felton is telling me he likes my work, there's nothing here, and he's maybe kind of thinking, maybe you should look here, maybe you should look there. And around the door pops Barry Devlin's head from Horslips, the bass player, singer in Horslips. And he turns around the door and Bill says, Barry, you know, and he says, this is Tony, you know, he's in just looking at his book. So Barry comes in, how's it going? Right? Northern, lovely Northern Milton. How's it going? And he looks at my stuff, right? And there and then he picks up the phone, right? Picks up the phone to a brilliant guy called Donald Helm, who had just started an agency, a very young agency. And he picked up the phone to Donald Helm and he goes, Donald, I've got a guy here with long hair, a Hawaiian shirt, and a great book. And I went around to Donald, right? I hope I did that accent some justice. I went around to Donald and I showed him my stuff and I got a job there in the Helm partnership. And that's Barry Devlin was in. And I ended up playing with Barry in the Philip Chevron testimonial later in the Olympia for Philip, you know, and it came to full circle. But I'm extremely thankful to Barry for doing that. You know, I don't know whether he remembers that or not, but that meant a lot to me. And I ended up working with Barry because Barry was freelance. He was a great writer, a copywriter. He'd worked in Arcs. My old company, Barry was in there. And lots of people came from that agency, the Devlins, Steve Averill. And I ended up working with Steve Averill, who was Steve Rappert from the Radiators from Space. We were working in the same place. And Steve's in the band in Trouble Pilgrims, you know. But Steve was one of the founding members of the Radiators from Space, and it does all the U2 album covers, did Trouble Pilgrims album covers, did many people's album covers. I learned a lot from Stephen, and but when we worked together, we never spoke about music. We never said, "Oh, we used to be in bands." He knew I was in bands. I knew he was in bands.
Is that a thing? Because people switch bands or they move from one. You just said we didn't speak. It's just you're in a different band. You go with that flow. You're doing that because artists and musicians are very talented. They can, they can go with that.
Yeah, well, it was just like, I suppose we all had a hurt in our heart of what we put into the bands before, because Stephen jumped out of the Radiators, when they went to London.
Yeah.
And like I had the heartbreak of the band imploding in London. And I'd also worked professionally with a great guy called Mike Mesver in Young Advertising, which became Havas Advertising. Great copywriter. We did a lot of really big work together on Bulmers and Centra food markets and all that kind of stuff. Full-blown commercial prostitution, make no mistake about it.
Yeah.
But Mike was the drummer in the Lookalikes. Right, I was a bass player. He's a drummer, and we're sitting there for weeks and months and hours, and we never say to one another, "Hey, do you ever want to form a band?" We don't say that because we're all wounded from what's happened. So that's funny. But to round that in, Marty, if I may, I went to I have a note on this, and there was a Justice Tonight gig, which the Radiators from Space played in the Academy Theatre in Dublin, right, in the Abbey Theatre. And it was The Farm, Mick Jones, Pete Wiley. And I was at that gig with a very dear friend of mine, David Bell. We went to that gig just willy-nilly. I'm just a punter, Marty. I'm just a punter. A few pints in the Oval, into the gig, watched the gig. It was, it was a gig, a rally against the sun because of the way they treated the Hillsborough people.
Yeah.
Remember the way they did all that, and everybody was there. Like, we were all there giving it large, right? So I walked out of that Justice Tonight gig onto the street, and Steve Averill was there, right? Steve Rabbit, and he said to me, "Tony, are you still doing the music?" And I said something like I always say, which is only in the safety of my own home, which is like playing at home, tapping away on guitars, goofing with a bit of synthesizer, whatever. And he says, we've got a band going, Trouble Pilgrims. He says, we need an extra guitar. Are you up for it?
Yeah.
And I said, Stephen, well, I'm a bass player for starters, but I said, I'll tell you what, I'd give it a go. And because I could play guitar, Marty, it wasn't going to be a whole new learning curve. I could play guitar. But the thing was, so I went to a rehearsal with the guys, Johnny Bonney, Pete Holiday, Paddy Goodwin was on the bass. And I went in, I was way out of my depth. And I stuck on with like fingernails in the rehearsals, trying to learn and keep up. And I kept on going. And Pete was extremely kind. I used to film Pete on the guitar, the way the chord movements, and I just work on it really hard, and I kept on going. But the way that went was so insane, because you talk about a high point, because you've asked me the low point and the high point. Next minute, I'm in the band. Am I okay for time, Marty?
No, carry on. We've got another 5-10 minutes. You're all right. Keep going.
So the long and the short of it was, I'm wading into the Trouble Pilgrims, right, just by the skin of my teeth. And Philip is unfortunately very ill. And the writing's on the wall. unfortunately for Philip. But he's brave, and everybody's brave about it. And he wants to do not like some sad story, right? He wants to do a testimonial to celebrate, to be with all the people he's worked with in his life. Now, Philip was in the Pogues. Everybody will know that. He's wrote thousands of sailings. Look it up, guys, if anybody doesn't know his work. It's just knockout stuff, right? So next minute, like this is me a wet weekend back in the business. He's having his testimonial in the Olympia Theatre in Dublin. My God, I cannot believe it. I'm going, shit, I'm going to be playing in the Olympia Theatre in Dublin with these guys, right? Part of the bill, Gavin Friday. You know, there's a load of them who played at the testimonial. Like Shane McGowan, I have the notes, Paul Brady, Liam Wainley, you know, Camille O'Sullivan. All these guys are on the bill for Gavin Friday, Bruce Shield, for Philip, to say, Philip, we love you. He was in the little box, you know, it's the classic theatre from Dublin. Like, you know, it's British designed, right? You know, those where they have the little boxes, and the theatre is glorious. Philip's there with his family, his sister Deborah and his family. He's unwell. He comes to the stage, he walked out, and he gets an incredible ovation, of course. Garrett Averill, Steve's son, has an incredible shot at that moment. The bottom line is, Marty, I'm on the stage with the guys playing Radiator songs as an honorary Radiator. I've never been a Radiator from space, but I was an honorary Radiator that night. And I couldn't believe it. My wife was in the audience. My son was in the audience. I was like, God, I couldn't believe it. And that was a hugely, I'm not saying it was a low point after that. I did get to play the Olympia a couple of times after that with the Boomtown Rats. Your mate Bob, we opened for him. And, you know, we've played with the Undertones. We've got some great, the Blades. You know, we have played with some great people and opened for them. I can't hear you, Marty. Marty, I can't hear you. Can't hear
Had
you.
my microphone
there
off.
You go.
I beg your pardon.
Thank
what
you.
Were saying there, as you were just alluding there, is how did your wife put up with you?
Well, that's been tricky because, like, you know, I am unusual, and I know that. And you know, as I always say, if you want to know me, come live with me. That's an old Dublin one, right?
I know
and
that.
no, I've got a very, very kind wife, you know, and it, you know, throw pandemics in again, you know, you're tested to the hilt. You know, if you have a weak link in that pandemic with anybody, I mean, I know loads of people who separated during that pandemic. They realized they were home with people, and it was like, boom, gone. And we managed to navigate our way through that, and navigate our way with a lovely son. And Susan is extremely kind, an activist in the strongest way these days for Palestine, and with huge passion for that and that injustice, as I do too. But Susan's at a different level in that. I mean, she's like consumed by the horror of that. But yeah, so we got through, and they've always, everybody's been cool to me, like, because I worked. You see, you asked me about making money in music. I've no money to show you. I've no money to show you.
I love that.
Also, I show you is the money that I made from advertising and working with people like Grain Beer and his family in AIL Group, who have been kind to me and use my my experience, which is vast, in brand consultancy, strategic work, art, words, and I make money that way, and therefore I can go rock and roll the other way.
Well, I was just going to say to you, as I'm about to wind up, but your passion, you know what? Sometimes, as I say, you know, the job I do here and self-funded, it's the best known paying job I ever had. It's about passion, isn't it? You know, Tony. Well, and that's what you obviously do. And most musicians, I believe, do that.
Yeah, well, like going back to the record, which it's great to talk about the old days. And thank you, Marty. And, I used this word to a friend of mine the other day, and I will use it to you as a highest accolade. You're a conduit. Look up conduit, man. I'm sure you know it. It means that things flow through you now. People come through you. Connections are made through you. And it's an amazing thing that you do and that you're doing. You're documenting this stuff, uh, with all the cuts and bruises on it. And you're asking me about sunshine moments. Yeah, I've got a lot of sunshine moments. I've got my dog who's conked out asleep on the chair. I don't know whether I can just show you that very quickly. He's there. See him? He's sleeping. Don't be whistling at him now. Let sleeping dogs lie.
Yeah, that's it. That's what they say.
Let sleeping dogs lie. He's a good boy.
Tony, thank you very much for your kind words. I think we're all in the same, is just to spread the word. And as we're just about to finish off, and we're going to play, which a song off. Now, tell us about this Boom Bang. Boom boom.
Bang 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 bang.
Bang bang. Yeah. I get it right. From the album, and we'll show this, and I recommend everyone can go on the link at the end of it. Tell us why this song came along.
Well, I want to say to people, and I know, well, my CD is here. I'm sorry to do a bit of commercial prostitution, but my CD,
absolutely, go for it.
Man on a Bridge is a CD you can order on rotatorvinyl.com.
Yep.
And spindizzyrecords.com. They will ship worldwide to you. And very quickly, you asked me about making money out of music, right? I'll tell you for what. I have not put this record on Spotify as yet. Will do, because that would be like telling the tide not to come in eventually. But I've done 100 copies of this vinyl. And in each of those copies of the vinyl will be a signed card by me with the number of the record on it. So
how do people get that? We'll put it at the end of the show, but
yeah,
how do they go on to get that?
rotatorvinyl.bandcamp.com. It's all on my stuff. You'll find Tony.
Yeah, I've got it there. We'll put that up at the end of the show, Tony.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, because I want people to have a real copy of my work, because this is the album I thought I would never make. And I thank Pete Holiday, who said the words, Tony, let's make a record.
Pete's a very positive guy. Now, before we just finish up, we're just running out of time, but I'd like to ask for the younger generation. We spoke about this, and young people that are going in and they've listened to this from many parts. They will be listening to this all over the world in different ones. We've heard your passion, we've heard everything. What advice would you give to anyone that wants to go in to the music scene?
I would say just be honest with yourself. Work hard. Keep on trying. Don't get knocked down. Persevere at it. Never give up on your dream. You have to be realistic, and live and provide for your family. Whatever means you do that. I want to say a quick hello to my cousins, the St. Ledgers in Brisbane, Australia, if they're out there, okay?
The Ledger, absolutely.
St. Ledger, yeah, I want to say that out there. And all the
not to get you in trouble, you better shout out to your wife. What was her name again? And
Susan, and all the St. Ledgers and Burns, no matter what.
Well done. I don't know how you keep them under control, Susan, but well done.
But she, listen, I want to say hello to everybody, because, it's not been easy for me, Marty, and I really mean that. I'm not going to paint some huge picture of beauty behind me, because that is untrue. It's made me what I am today, to be able to speak out. Now, you've asked me about just be honest to yourself. Don't let people destroy your dreams. Don't let people talk you down. And dream. Don't be afraid to dream. The dream is, I'm living proof. I'm 64, I think, this year, okay? The mile, I say 64,000 miles on the clock, right? And I still got a record out. I'm playing gigs. I'm still gigging, I say in the film Dark Shadows and Rust, in the film, I say it. Your physicality is in a time jar somewhere. Don't waste your time. Use it. I wish I knew a lot more of that when I was younger, Marty, you know?
No, Tony, I think you've nailed a lot there, but also is my mum used to say is, as you were saying there, aim for the sky, and if you hit the clouds, you've done well. You know, and follow your passion. Tony, I can't thank you enough. It's been a privilege and an honor, and we're going to finish off. And all this.
Oh yeah, Bang Bang. I've got to tell you about Bang Bang.
Yes, please, that's what I was you read my notes, didn't you? We're about.
Well, no, I didn't. It's not that, but Bang Bang is an incredible character, and they've got to look him up in Dublin because he lived up in the Liberties. Okay, I'm just reaching for my lyrics here because I have them right here, and because there's certain parts of it. Yeah, he was. I go into this as well in another track on the album called "Locked Away in Two Way" because years ago, Marty, in society, you know, there was loads of people who were suffering from chronic depression, bipolar. There were special needs people, ADHD people, but they were like a lot of them were treated so badly. And you know, now we know in today's society it's a different ball game because people can get treatments and they're not just locked away and shut away. But Bang Bang was out there. Okay, he was a guy who was orphaned. I know he was, and he was looked after by priests and nuns. And he rolled around the Liberties. He rolled around Dublin. He was on the back of the buses with a big golden key, shooting people because he loved cowboy movies. He loved Audie Murphy, John Wayne, Randolph Scott. You know, my dad spoke about him. My uncle Jimmy did know him because Jimmy was a Christian man and he looked after people in town. He was the manager of Tower Street Bats for many years. But Bang Bang rolled around town and started firing at people. But people played along with him. They duck around and roll and pretend that people were falling on the ground, pretend they're dead, that they shot him. But he was on the bus with his brass key. He went in, and you know, Marty, how cold it can get here in Ireland in the winter and how miserable and cold. But he used to hang out in the cinema, the Tivoli, on Francis Street, if I'm not mistaken. It is Francis Street. And he went into that cinema. I heard they never charged him in, and he was in, so he at least could get in out of the weather in the time and watch the cowboy movies endlessly on reruns. And he was just totally into the cowboy bit. I researched him a lot. His brass key is in the Pierce Street Library, 100 yards from my dad's original house, as it happens. And that key is there. But Bang Bang, it says, a long brown coat covered the pain of sporadic loss. A brass key, his 45, unlocked the silver screen world. To Duke and Scott and Audie Murphy, his heroes one and all. The sisters prayed, they prayed to save, that all was not lost for Bang Bang. And then the last reprise of the verse was, a warm Tivoli, which is the theatre, sure feels safe inside. High noon, full moon, just to allude to his madness, gunfights in the aisle. Those lonely hallowed halls, he hears the angel songs. He's walking dead in streets. Lord Dudley's now at peace, which is his real name, Thomas Dudley. Bang Bang's our Dublin ghost. He haunts the city from pillar to post. Bang Bang.
Wow, wow, wow.
It's on the record. It's there.
They can follow that now, and we will put that up, but we're going to finish off with that song, and then we're going to put in some with many people that you've served, including our friend Pete Holiday and other ones that you've served. Well, these photographs are going to come up now. Tony, can I just say it's been a privilege? I know I could have gone on for another 2 hours, but I'm sure my editor and co-producer would be very annoyed with me. But Tony, stay in touch, and can we promote this out here and just say that I think you're an amazing man with a very, I'd use this word, very positive attitude. a very humble, positive attitude, and we'll stay in touch. And I wish you well. Thank you, Tony.
Love what you do, Marty. God bless all your good work, and my best to all your viewers from Dublin.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you to listeners here in Australia, New Zealand, all over the world. And please look on the end and follow Tony on his story, his journey, his music. And we'll put up his new album, which you must listen to, Man on the Bridge, the album, and there's many songs off that. So thank you. And for now, good evening from Melbourne and good morning from Tony in Ireland.
God bless you, Marty.
Tony. Love you, buddy. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.